We walked into that church to steal the cross and prove our strength. But none of us were ready for what happened next. What could make grown men drop to the floor and cry in front of the very symbol they came to destroy? My name is Karim, and I am 32. On the night of October 14th, 2018, I pushed open the side door of an old stone church with shaking hands and a heart full of anger. The door made a low creak as it moved. Cold air brushed my face. The smell of melted wax and old wood slipped out into the dark street. I looked back once at the empty road, then stepped inside. 3 other men followed me. We wore dark hoodies and gloves. Not because we were thieves, we told ourselves, but because we did not want trouble. The church was quiet. Too quiet. The kind of quiet that makes your own breathing sound loud. Moonlight came through tall stained glass windows. Red and blue shapes fell across the stone floor. Long wooden benches stood in rows like soldiers. At the front, raised by 3 wide steps, stood a tall wooden cross. It was simple. No gold, no jewels. Just dark wood, about 6 feet tall, with marks and small cracks that showed its age. That was why we came. Earlier that day, we had stood outside this same church. It was Sunday afternoon. Families walked out smiling. Children ran down the steps. A bell rang above us, slow and deep. I felt something twist inside me. I told myself it was anger. I was born in Aleppo, Syria. My father was a strict man. He woke before sunrise every day to pray. My mother taught children to read the Quran in our small living room. Faith was not just part of life, it was life. When I was 8, I could recite long passages by heart. When I was 12, elders praised me for my strong memory. I felt proud. I felt chosen. Then war came, loud blasts, smoke in the sky. We left with 2 bags and a small box of family photos. We moved to Germany when I was 19. Everything was different there. Churches stood on corners, crosses hung on walls, Christmas lights filled the streets in winter. I felt small and out of place. At school, some students asked me about my faith. Some were kind, some were not. I learned to speak strong and fast. I learned to argue. I learned to defend. Every debate I won made me feel taller. By the time I was 32, I had built a hard shell around my heart. I worked long hours in a warehouse. At night, I met with a small group of Muslim friends. We talked about staying firm, about not losing who we were. That's about not letting our faith fade in a foreign land. That Sunday afternoon, when we saw the cross through the open church door, one of my friends laughed under his breath. "They bow to wood," he said. The words stayed with me. Later that evening, in my small apartment kitchen, we sat around a table with cups of tea. The light above us flickered. One of the men said, "What if we take it? The cross. Show them we are not afraid." I should have said no. Instead, I felt a spark of boldness. "Not to sell," I said, "not for money. We take it so they know their symbol has no power." The others nodded. We told ourselves it would be quick, no harm, just a statement. Now, standing inside the church, I felt that boldness fading. The air was cool. I could hear the soft hum of a heater somewhere behind the walls. A small red light glowed near the altar. "Let's finish this," one of the men whispered. We walked down the center aisle. Our footsteps echoed. Each step felt heavier than the last. I tried to keep my face hard. I tried to keep my mind clear. But something inside me felt uneasy, like a warning I did not want to hear. We reached the steps, 3 steps up to the altar. I counted them without thinking. 1, 2, 3. Up close, the cross looked bigger than before. The wood had deep lines. I could see where hands had touched it over the years. The base was wide and thick, maybe 2 feet across. It would not be easy to carry. "Lift from the bottom," one of my friends said. I reached out. The wood felt cold under my gloves, solid, real, not soft, not weak. In that second, a strange thought came to me. This cross had stood here through storms, through years, through prayers and tears of strangers I did not know. It had not moved. It had not fought back. It had simply stood. I tightened my grip. Behind me, I heard glass rattle. Another friend had stepped toward a small case on the side table. Inside were small metal boxes and what looked like old cloth. "Relics," a sign said earlier that day. "Take that too," someone whispered. My heart began to beat faster, not from fear of police, not from fear of getting caught, from something else, something I could not name. I pulled on the cross. It did not move. I pulled harder. My arms strained. My breath grew loud in my ears. The church seemed to close in around me. Then I felt it, not a hand, not a push, a weight in my chest. It was sudden, heavy, like someone had placed a stone inside me. My throat tightened, my eyes burned. I tried to shake it off. "This is nothing," I told myself, "just nerves." But the weight grew. Behind me, one of the men said, "I feel sick." Another said, "We should hurry." The red light near the altar flickered once. The heater hum stopped. For a moment, the church was completely silent. In that silence, I heard my own breathing, fast, shallow. I looked up at the cross. The wood grain seemed darker now. The shadow it cast on the wall stretched long and thin. A memory flashed in my mind. My grandmother, years ago, sitting by a window in Aleppo. She once told me, "Never touch what others call holy with a proud heart. God sees the heart before the hand." I had forgotten that, until now. My hands began to shake. I tried to step back, but my knees felt weak. My chest tightened more. My eyes filled with tears, and I did not know why. I was not afraid of wood. So why did it feel like something inside me was breaking? I let go of the cross. My gloves brushed against the smooth wood one last time. Behind me, I heard a soft thud. One of my friends had dropped the small metal box back into the case. His face looked pale in the moonlight. "We need to go," he said, but I could not move. The weight inside me was no longer just heavy. It was crushing. My breath came in short gasps. My legs bent without my choice. I fell to my knees on the cold stone floor. Right there in front of the cross, we came to steal. And as my palms hit the marble, a tear slid down my face. Have you ever walked into a place ready to prove your strength, only to feel something inside you begin to fall apart before you even understand why? The stone floor pressed cold against my knees, and I felt the heat of my own panic crawling up my chest. My name is Karim, and I am 32. But at that moment, I did not feel like a man at all. I felt like a boy who had been caught in a storm he could not control. The cross loomed above me, still solid and unmoving, and my friends' heavy breaths echoed through the dark church. Their eyes were wide, faces pale, sweat glinting in the dim moonlight. The relics lay untouched on the side table, small metal boxes and ancient clothes that looked harmless, yet seemed to vibrate with unseen energy. One of my friends muttered, "What is happening to us?" His voice was shaky, almost a whisper. Another tried to laugh, but it came out as a strangled cough. The silence of the church pressed on us like a physical weight. The stained glass above painted red and blue patterns that shifted with the flicker of the overhead light. Every shadow seemed to stretch and twist, as if the walls themselves were alive. I tried to stand, to shake off the fear, but my legs refused. My chest burned, my throat felt raw, and my hands, still hovering over the cross, trembled violently. Memories flooded me. I saw my father praying on a worn mat, fingers counting beads with reverence. I saw my mother teaching the Quran to children who looked at her with wide eyes, trusting every word. I remembered a childhood full of pride in my faith, pride that now felt like a distant echo. My friends moved closer to me, their faces pale masks of confusion. "We shouldn't have come here," one said. "This isn't right." His words struck something deep inside me. I had known, always in the back of my mind, that this act was wrong, but I had buried that knowledge under anger and pride. Now it clawed its way back with a ferocity I could not ignore. I looked at the cross again. It was 6 feet tall, dark wood marred with lines and scratches from countless hands over countless years. There was nothing violent about it, nothing alive in the sense of a person or animal, yet it seemed to radiate a presence I could not name. I could feel it through my gloves, through the skin of my fingers, and more deeply, through the pit of my stomach. I realized I had come here thinking I could take power from it. Instead, it was showing me my own weakness. I whispered, almost to myself, "Why is this happening?" My voice sounded strange, alien even. One of my friends dropped to the floor beside me, tears streaming down his face, body shaking. Another clutched at the side table, the relics rattling inside their boxes. They were crying too, and I realized that the three of us, men who had always prided ourselves on strength and control, had collapsed together in front of a wooden cross and some old boxes. The air felt thick, heavy, as if the church itself were pressing down on us. I could hear my heartbeat loud in my ears and the low hum of the heater somewhere behind the walls. My mind raced, trying to make sense of it. I tried to remember the lessons of anger and pride my father had warned me about. I tried to remember the discipline of faith that had once guided me. But those thoughts were drowned in the sensation of helplessness, a helplessness I had never known in my life. I crawled a few inches forward on the cold stone, closer to the cross. My gloves brushed against the wood, smooth and unyielding. I could see the grain in the dark brown, the small cracks that spoke of age and endurance. Something inside me loosened. Not fear, not exactly, but a deep recognition that this object, this simple wooden cross, had outlasted more than I could imagine. It had withstood storms, fire, and time itself. It had endured quietly, while we, full of arrogance and anger, had come to destroy it. My friends looked at me with eyes full of questions. "Karim," one said, voice trembling, "do you feel it too?" I nodded, unable to speak. My chest was still heavy, my knees pressed into the cold, hard stone. I could feel the tears running down my face now, hot and shameful. Memories of my homeland, of my family, of everything I had clung to in my life surged forward. And with them, an unfamiliar sense of humility. For what felt like hours, none of us moved. The church around us was quiet but alive in a way I could feel. Each flicker of the heater, each shifting shadow from the stained glass seemed to carry a message I could not yet understand. I thought of all the anger I had carried, all the pride, all the need to prove myself. And I realized that none of it mattered here, not in this place, not in front of something so simple, so enduring, that it had the power to crack the hardest hearts. Slowly, I sat back on my heels, hands pressed to the stone floor. My friends mirrored me, shaking, crying, silent. I did not understand why the tears came so freely. I did not understand why the weight on my chest would not lift. But I felt it, a mixture of fear, awe, and something I could not name, something that reached deeper than pride, deeper than anger, deeper than pain. A soft sound came from the side, almost a whisper. I turned my head slightly and saw the relics, still in their boxes. They were small, delicate, and ordinary. And yet, now they seemed alive with meaning. My friends looked at them, hesitation and wonder written across their faces. I realized that what we had come for, the cross, the relics, the symbols, were never meant to be stolen. They were meant to reveal what was hidden in our own hearts. I pressed my forehead to the floor. My body was exhausted, trembling, but my mind was opening in a way I had never known. Every thought of pride, every intention of proving myself crumbled, and in its place, a question burned brighter than anything else. If a simple cross and a few old relics could shake me to my knees, what was the truth we had been blind to all our lives? My hands were still pressed against the cold stone floor, and my knees ached from hours of kneeling, yet I could not move. My name is Karim, and I am 32, but at that moment I felt older than my years, as if all the pride and anger I had carried were pressing down on me at once. The church was silent, but the silence was alive, almost breathing around us. My friends were scattered around me, each in their own world of trembling and tears. Their eyes darted nervously to the cross, the relics, the shadows that stretched across the walls. I could feel the energy of the place, though it was not electricity or heat. It was something deeper, something that pressed on my chest and whispered to my soul. The wooden cross stood tall in front of me, simple yet commanding, with its surface scarred by time. Light from the stained glass flickered over it, red and blue and gold, dancing in a way that made it seem alive. I wanted to look away, to run, but my eyes were glued to it, and my body refused to obey. One of my friends, Ahmed, tried to speak. "We should leave," he said, voice barely audible. "We can't stay here, this isn't us." His words sounded small, almost swallowed by the weight of the room. Another, Sami, shook violently, tears cutting clean paths down his cheeks. I don't understand," he stammered. "Why? Why are we like this?" The fear in his voice mirrored my own, though I had no answers. I moved a few inches forward, closer to the cross. My gloves scraped the stone floor, and the sound was louder than I expected. The relics sat on their table, untouched, but I felt their pull. They were ordinary objects, boxes and clothes and metal, yet they vibrated with a presence I could not explain. I reached out with one trembling hand and touched the edge of a relic box. It was cold, smooth, unyielding. My breath caught in my throat, and I felt a shiver run from my fingers up to my chest. A memory came to me suddenly. I was a boy again, watching my father pray at dawn. His hands moved with precision, his eyes closed, and the room was filled with quiet devotion. I remembered feeling safe, secure, certain that the world had order and meaning. That certainty had faded over the years, replaced by pride and the need to prove myself. And now, kneeling in front of a cross I had come to steal, I realized how fragile all of that certainty had been. My friends were moving closer together, some whispering apologies, some crying softly. I could see fear in their eyes, but also wonder, like they were seeing something they had never noticed before. The cross seemed to reach into us, into every corner of our hearts, exposing the pride, the anger, the guilt we had carried so easily. We had come to take power, to claim something that was not ours, and instead, it had taken hold of us. I pressed my forehead to the floor, my chest heaving, and I whispered a prayer I did not understand. The words were not from my Quran, not from the lessons I had learned as a child. They were raw, desperate, a mix of fear and awe. The church seemed to respond, though not with sound. The air grew heavier, more solid, as if every breath I took was being measured and returned. I felt tears on my cheeks, hot and unstoppable, and my friends were crying too, their sobs breaking the silence like glass shattering. I glanced at the relics again, the small boxes, the ancient cloths, the simple items I had thought were meaningless. They were speaking to me without words. They were reminders that we had been blind, that our hearts were hardened, and that something far greater than pride or anger was at work here. The cross, the relics, the quiet of the church. It was teaching us, forcing us to see what we had never dared to see. I thought of my life outside this church, of my work, my friends, my family, all the moments I had spent chasing power, respect, and control. They seemed empty now, pale compared to what I was feeling in this one cold, silent space. My body shook, my mind raced, and yet a strange peace began to settle over me, tiny and fragile, like a candle struggling against the wind. Ahmed whispered again, "Karim, do you feel it?" I nodded, unable to speak. Sami reached out and touched my shoulder, trembling. We can't take anything, can we?" His voice was almost a plea. I shook my head slowly, understanding the truth we had come to take. But what we had received was far more than we could have imagined. It was humbling, terrifying, and awe-inspiring all at once. For hours, or maybe minutes, time had lost meaning. The three of us stayed there, kneeling, crying, trembling. The cross watched silently, and the relics waited patiently. I realized that our fear, our pride, our anger, they were all part of us, but they had been exposed, laid bare in the presence of something eternal. I pressed my palms to the floor, feeling the rough stone through my gloves, and a single question burned inside me, that stronger than the panic, stronger than the tears. If the power we sought could not be taken by force, what had been waiting for us all along, quietly, patiently, inside our own hearts? The church doors creaked behind us as we tried to rise, but our bodies refused to obey. My name is Karim, and I am 32, yet I felt as if I had aged decades in the last hours. The floor beneath my hands was still cold, the stone pressing into my skin like a reminder of every choice I had made. Ahmed and Sami were beside me, their shoulders shaking with silent sobs, eyes wide and uncomprehending. None of us spoke because words felt weak against the weight of what we had just experienced. I looked around, taking in the flickering light through the stained glass, the shadows crawling along the pews. The cross at the altar seemed alive now, not a piece of wood, but a living presence, holding us accountable, opening parts of our hearts we had long ignored. The relics glimmered faintly in the dim light, catching the fire of understanding in their quiet way. It was as if the church itself had swallowed our pride, leaving nothing behind but raw truth. I tried to move, to get up, but my legs would not respond. The ache in my knees and calves was nothing compared to the heaviness in my chest. I felt trapped inside my own body, and yet free in ways I could not explain. Ahmed whispered my name, his voice fragile. "Karim, we can't stay here forever. What do we do now?" I shook my head slowly, my mind spinning. What we had come to steal had not been stolen, but given in a way that demanded surrender. I crawled forward a few inches, drawn again to the cross. My hands brushed against the stone floor, fingers trembling. I imagined it pulsing, alive, as though aware of every heartbeat, every shame, every longing inside me. Sammy reached out and grabbed my hand, gripping tightly, his eyes searching mine for understanding. I could see his soul mirrored in the fear and awe in my own eyes. The sound of our breathing seemed impossibly loud in the stillness. It was not just our lungs filling with air, it was a soundtrack to every emotion we had denied for years. Guilt, fear, anger, and shame mingled with something new, something I did not yet have words for. It pressed against me like the walls themselves were breathing on my skin. I realized then that we were not in control. We had never been in control. Ahmed moved closer to the relic table, reaching for the box again, but he stopped short, his hand hovering inches above it. "I thought I wanted this," he said, voice breaking. "I thought I wanted to take it, to have it, but I don't even know what it is anymore." His words struck me like a physical blow. We had come to claim power, but all we had found was surrender. A memory flashed in my mind, unbidden. I was 10 years old again, watching my mother kneel in prayer, her hands quivering, her eyes wet. I had felt a strange mixture of fear and admiration, a pull towards something I could not name. That feeling had never left me. It had only been buried under layers of pride and anger. Now it resurfaced, sharp and undeniable, and I realized it was calling me to something beyond my understanding. Sammy's sobs grew louder, echoing off the stone walls, and I could not stop the tears that streamed down my face. The air felt thick, yet heavy with the weight of our unspoken sins, yet somehow alive with possibility. Every object in the church, the pews, the relics, the cross, seemed to pulse with meaning, and yet it was not something I could grasp fully. It was something I had to feel, to surrender to. I pressed my forehead to the floor again, chest heaving, and felt the rough texture of the stone beneath me. It grounded me, held me, reminded me that I could not run from what I had discovered. Ahmed whispered, almost inaudibly, What is happening to us?" I did not answer. There were no words strong enough to explain it. The truth was too big, too alive, and yet it had chosen us. I thought of the night sky, of the city outside, of the life I had been living before this moment. Everything seemed hollow compared to the intensity of what was happening inside these walls. We had come to take, to dominate, to claim something for ourselves, and instead we were stripped bare, stripped of pride, stripped of certainty, and left trembling, exposed, alive. The relics called to us, but not with the promise of ownership or power. They called with the invitation to understand, to kneel, to recognize something eternal and unknowable. I reached out again, fingertips brushing the box, and felt a warmth unlike anything I had felt before. It was not mine to hold. It belonged to something far greater, and yet it touched me in a way I could not resist. We remained there for what felt like hours, silent but aware, until the first light of dawn began to touch the stained glass, scattering colors across the floor. The shadows receded, but the weight of the experience lingered, pressing down, rooting us to the stone. We were changed. I knew it in my bones, in the trembling of my hands, in the tears that refused to stop. I finally looked at Ahmed and Sami, both still kneeling, both lost and found in the same instant. We can't take anything," Sami whispered, voice barely audible. "Do you understand?" I nodded, tears blurring my vision. What we had come to claim had taken hold of us instead. It had stripped us, humbled us, and awakened something we had never dared to feel. As we rose slowly, bodies weak, hearts racing, a single question burned through the silence, louder than our sobs, louder than the wind outside. If everything we thought we wanted could not satisfy us, what had been waiting all along to heal the emptiness inside us? The sunlight poured through the broken stained glass, was painting the floor with reds and blues as we stumbled to our feet, bodies still trembling. My name is Karim, and I am 32, but in that moment I felt years older and yet somehow reborn. The relics sat untouched, glowing faintly in the morning light, as if waiting for someone worthy, someone who could finally see them without greed or fear. Ahmed and Sami were behind me, silent, wiping tears from their faces, eyes wide with awe. Every breath I drew felt different, heavier, fuller, filled with a strange calm I had never known. I stepped closer to the cross, fingertips brushing the rough wood, and a warmth spread through me, settling deep in my chest. I felt forgiveness, not for others, but for myself. The anger and shame I had carried for years began to melt, replaced by something I could not name, something stronger than fear or pride. Sami whispered, voice trembling, "Karim, what is this?" I shook my head, unable to speak. Words could not contain it. We left the church quietly, hearts pounding, changed forever, and I could not stop asking myself, if this power could humble us, could it also heal the emptiness we carried for so long?